The Oklahoma Highway Patrol was created in 1937 based on a standard of tradition and excellence. 125 patrolmen swore an oath to protect and serve the citizens of Oklahoma. Assisting motorists, enforcing traffic laws, and pursuing evasive criminals that escaped county lines became the call of the Oklahoma State Trooper. Through the decades, America saw a rise in civil unrest, prison escapes, and an overall spike in violent crime. The OHP responded to the needs of the people by creating riot squads that could provide a swift response, take control, and calm the uprising. The 1973 McAllister prison riot, as well as numerous manhunts for prison escapees and violent criminals on the run from the law, showcased the need to organize a specialized unit, a group capable of operating as a team, able to track these offenders deep in the terrain of rural Oklahoma. In 1974, multiple troopers, all men with military background, began the conversation about unconventional tactics needed to apprehend these fleeing felons. This is their story.
Raised in Bryan County, and Durant was my home. My dad was a medical doctor, my mother was RN, and raised on the farm.
Okay, I was born and raised at Woodward, Oklahoma. Graduated from high school in 1961, but growing up there, my dad always taught me how to hunt quail and things like that, and that was our time we spent together, and it was really a good time. And I played football at high school, and I always remember down in the end zone at our home games, we'd see Bill Young and Jim Holland, who were the troopers there stationed there.
I was born in Hinton, Oklahoma, and raised nearby, northwest of Minko, Oklahoma, in the country. I learned to farm. I did various things around for the neighbors, and learned to work and appreciate what work would help us accomplish.
Mays County, Oklahoma. My dad worked for Grand River Dam Authority. Lived in Langley and Bonita and Pryor. Graduated from Pryor High School. After we moved there to Pryor, I played football, got a scholarship to Oklahoma Military Academy, which is now Rogers State College University.
I was born in 1948 in South Seminole County, and parents moved to California until 1958, where we moved back to the same location in Seminole County for my parents to take care of my grandparents. My dad farmed and raised cattle. I took care of the cows. Felt like I was the only part of a John Deere tractor that could come in the afternoons to get some rest.
The area that I leaned to is emergency services, and mainly the fire department. When I was 12 years old, I started going over to the fire department there in Durant and aggravating them, and they would let me read their red books and so on, and I started to hang around with them. And even 12, 13 years old, they'd hired me on the fire truck when they went on a run, so my parents wouldn't see me. This continued on into, as I got older, and I still liked the fire department, fire service, emergency services, storm watching. This always was a big part of what I did, and I don't think my parents really understood it, but I did. 17 half, I wanted to go in the military and join the Army Reserve. My mother had to sign for me to do that, and after she signed up, let me sign that for the military. I went into basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and then went on to advanced infantry training at Fort Dix, New Jersey. Came out of that, went to college. That didn't work out too good, so I decided that I wanted to go in the military. So I went through OCS at Fort Benning, Georgia, and from there I started a career in the military. I've enjoyed that. I had a lot of different schools I went to. Went to jump school first, and that was pretty exciting. So I thought, well, I wanted to, as an infantry officer, well, I wanted to be the best. And at that time, Ranger School was going strong, and so I went on to Ranger School and Pathfinder and Jungle Warfare School, and mainly schools that would assist me in the unit I was in. This continued on, and maybe it was what I liked to do, but it's always fun. It was always exciting, and I didn't hesitate at any one time of something that's kind of unusual. Well, I did it.
During high school, several of us, I think there was 6 of us at one time, joined the National Guard there while we were seniors in high school. And after we graduated from high school, went to basic training. I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and was in mechanic school there also. After I got through with my military training, I played football for 4 years at Southwestern State at Weatherford, and got a degree in education. Went to Burns Flat, Oklahoma, teach school for 1 year, and I did not like that at all.
I joined the National Guard when I was 16 years old. My parents had to sign for me so I could be in the National Guard. A friend come by and recruited me, asking me if I wanted to drive trucks, shoot guns, and camp out, and I told him sure. Later on, I didn't realize what we got into, but I was part of a artillery group, 160th Artillery Battalion, and later I was promoted to the rank of Staff Sergeant and was a section chief for the artillery gun. In the National Guard, I learned discipline. I learned training and learned things about artillery shells and explosives, and learned a little bit of leadership.
It's university now, but then it was Oklahoma Military Academy. It was a military school, obviously, and took ROTC there. After leaving there, I went to Oklahoma University, took ROTC, Army ROTC there, and majored in history, and wanted to pursue a military career. But in 1972, as we're all aware of, Vietnam was winding down, and they sent me a 8x10 suitable for framing honorable discharge. So I took it because I had to go find a job.
I graduated from Vamoose High School in 1966. In 1966, after graduation, I attended East Central University and later joined the National Guard that year and went to Fort Polk, Louisiana, as a combat infantry soldier, and from there to San Antonio, Texas for combat medic training.
The time I spent in the military on active duty, I couldn't go anywhere as I didn't have a college degree. So I got out of the military to go back to school. And when I got back to school, well, finished my bachelor's degree and started to find a job. I didn't know what to do, and except to teach. That's what I was trained to do. So I stayed in the reserves and went on to New Mexico. Lived out there for 3 years, and then stayed with the fire department again.
1969, I became a patrolman with the Ada PD, where I met troopers H.T. Gay, Spike Mitchell, and John Wayne Smith. I was there for approximately a year and a half, and in that year and a half's time, I worked. Spike Mitchell came in on needing assistance on a roadblock from a trooper that was killed down around Ardmore. And I went on that roadblock assignment with him at Davis, Oklahoma, where we searched vehicles and stopped all the vehicles coming through. We were on the inner circle. After that, I decided that I wanted to put in an application for the Highway Patrol, and H.T. Gay came to my house for the interview, and the night that he came there was the night that Walker and the 2 park rangers were shot, and he was called out during my interview. At that time, he asked me if I would go with him. So I suited up in my police department uniform, and we went on roadblock assignment. We were on observation block. We weren't stopping vehicles or what have you, but we were there all night. And that was the second time I was involved in manhunt type operations, both of them with the Highway Patrol, Spike Mitchell and H.T. Gay.
I later was working and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I applied for Oklahoma City Police Department and the Highway Patrol. When Oklahoma City Police called for an interview, something told me that wasn't for me, and I just waited. Later on, the Highway Patrol called me and offered me an invitation to come in for an interview, and I came in and was later placed in a school, the next patrol school.
I worked at a service station when off season, when football wasn't on. I worked at a service station there, and Bill would always bring his patrol car in there to have it serviced. And he said, "Why don't you apply for the patrol?" And I said, "I would love to."
I wanted to, have a profession that meant something, that was pertinent, to bring about justice, catch bad guys, and to kind of get a profession that I could kind of put your teeth into and could be involved in, but which profession needs. That's your life, and that's what I wanted.
Farmington Fire Department, where I worked in the summertime, wanted me to come on with them full time, and I'd heard about the Highway Patrol and what they paid, and I thought that was kind of interesting. The fire department paid me $375 a month. The Highway Patrol in Oklahoma would pay me $400, and then since I had GI Bill, I would give them an extra $150 or something a month for 18 months for a critical area that they needed. So I decided to do that. I wrote the Department of Public Safety and told them I lived in Oklahoma and they would allow me to go ahead and join the patrol, but you had to have permission from the commissioner. I'm still waiting on that letter from the Commissioner of Public Safety. Some way I never did get it, but they let me go ahead and join in 1970.
One day this patrol car pulled in, a solid car, black car pulled in there, and this rolled the window down, and I had been to Oklahoma City for my interviews and everything, and it was Leo White. He had driven all the way from Oklahoma City out there to tell me that I was going to go to patrol school. And I could not been any more happy. And I thought that was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, to get to be accepted by the Oklahoma Highway Patrol.
In 1971, I was accepted to the 28th Patrol Academy. When the academy started, I walked through the doors of the old National Guard Armory where the school was being held on 36th Street. And the first thing I saw was Lieutenant Weimers standing in the door. When all of the applicants had gotten inside the building, he screamed out, "Get up against the bulkhead." and we all looked at each other wondering what the bulkhead was, and I was real close to a Coke machine, so I got between the Coke machine and the wall and stood there, and of course that wasn't the right place. He knew we didn't know what a bulkhead was, so he explained that to us in some colorful language, and after that the patrol school proceeded with him and Kenneth Strang being our house moms. Sel Howe was our school commandant, and there's where we learned about the highway patrol. It began in April. I graduated on July 2nd and had to go to work in Tulsa, where I was assigned on July 4th.
I applied for Oklahoma Highway Patrol, and I was at that time working for Bradley Chevrolet in Broken Arrow, and just waiting for the academy to start and get the phone call that I was accepted, which I did. I got married and was graduated from the 32nd Academy and graduated in the spring of 1974.
I got a letter stating I was accepted into the 28th Academy for 1 week, at which time we'd be pulled out with 4 other individuals in the academy to provide security for Governor Hall, and that we would be guaranteed a position in the 29th Academy if we accepted. So I accepted that, and I provided security for Governor Hall and his kids as a cadet until the beginning of the 28th Academy. And my first assignment out of the 29th Academy was at Oklahoma City Interstate.
I was in the 27th Highway Patrol Academy. It was at the Army Reserve or Museum over there at across from the UPS. That's where we had our school. We got there on Sunday and they all welcomed us and made us feel good, and it was probably 50 of us in our class. And then everybody left, and a guy, the bulldog-looking fellow, got up, a trooper, and he said some expletive, and then he said, "Where's that so-and-so ranger?" Well, and I was smart enough to know not to be first, not to be last, and not to volunteer anything. So I just sat there quietly. I didn't know what he was talking about. And he said, "Haney, stand up." So I stood up, and he said, "You're the only so-and-so in here that knows what's going to happen. Now sit down." And I was wondering, how in the world did he get my 201 file? How did he know that stuff? But that was my first introduction to Darrell Wiemers. After I got out of patrol school, I wanted to be assigned to a small town. I put Durant, Ada, I think McAllister, and of course they sent me to Tulsa, Owassa. It was my first assignment.
In 1967, I was in the 22nd Academy and graduated in 1967, assigned into the metro area section here of Troop. Well, back then it was District 1, but now it's Troop A.
We had training in the patrol school about manhunts, and it was usually the outer perimeter and the inner perimeter, and we were glued to our car. We had no radios once we get outside the car, and we were just trained to use the roadblocks. And most of the time that worked pretty good, but sometimes the bad guy get out of his car and he'd go out in the woods, and we really didn't have any method to apprehend him. But I took mental note of that, and looked like to me it's pretty easy to catch these folks who get out on the ground and start looking at them and find out what they're doing and how they're doing it.
After the academy, I graduated and assigned to Oklahoma County. We had a lot of manhunts in the 70s and 80s. And basically, I just told to go set up on an intersection of, say, Highway 62 and 99, or one of those roads, 177. That's the only ones I remember. It varies, not counting the county roads that we set up roadblocks on. We had an inner and outer perimeter, as best I can recall, on how to do this. And it seemed like I was on the outer perimeter, and I wanted to be more involved and to actually go after these people once they abandoned their car, to go in the woods after them. And that was kind of common sense to me. And of course, that was just my thinking. But then it evolved. Other people were thinking about this also.
I mean, you want to be where the action is. You want to be doing what needs to be done. And in most of these manhunts you'd get involved with, you'd have to wait on the prison's dogs. They wouldn't let you do anything prior to, and everybody was in their brown uniform and shine boots. And I know I got tired of following the dogs that never caught anybody. And why there had to be a better way.
Again, I got to meet, was a Trooper Weimers, now it's a Lieutenant Weimers, and he was always interested in terrorism and things like that, and started visiting with him about this problem, and he had recognized the problem too. And from that point on, we started visiting and discussing what we could do. We had the riot squad had gas man and had snipers and so on, but most of the people were just on that team were the people that fill the space. The tactical team, the way we thought of it, was going to be a smaller unit, able to do more, and with the proper equipment and weapons, we'd be able to get in the woods and track the person down that we're looking for, and keep pressure on it.
Put that in the context of the times. We're coming out of the 60s and 70s, which were turbulent, a lot of unrest in the United States. And right here in Oklahoma, we were seeing our share of that. And the Oklahoma Highway Patrol was being called more and more often to come off the highway and serve as a force to come in and help in emergency situations or large situations that could not be handled by local PD or local sheriffs.
In 1973, I was transferred from Shawnee back to the training center. And during this time, Darrell Weimers and I got to be good friends, and Fred and Darrell was, he's always working out, and very fit, and I got to working out with him and lifting weights with him, and we got to be good friends. And then later on, I made lieutenant supervisor, and I was under him as a supervisor. We continued to work out all the time, and we would discuss. Darrell was phenomenal in his anti-terrorism. He was very up on it, and we would talk about manhunts and things like that, and we just didn't have a team that could be able to go out that. But that was I think that was his dream, that we would form a team to do that.
So I'm thinking about some of those individuals. Darrell Weimers was a intellectual guy, but still he was tough. He was well trained. He was disciplined. He was a bit hard-headed, but boy, he was the kind of guy you'd want to be in a foxhole with. And Darrell was, in my mind, Darrell and John Haney were perhaps the leaders of this group. John was equally as smart. John was a great strategist. He was an analyst. He was the kind of person who could plot out the best path to get you from point A to point B. You're taking a building or taking a a location, you want John to be able there as your tactical person to analyze the situation. And also, he was a fierce competitor, and he was also a guy who was perfect for a team like this. Dutch Snyder was also provided another element, and Dutch was a big guy who knew weapons. He was a kind of bull of a man who, I tell you, you would, be able to be with him in any kind of a situation. And Dutch, you knew he could handle he could handle a weapon, and he could handle his body. And Dutch was a wonderful person for that team. Fred Horn was also a guy who was very eager, and he was very interested and very committed to this effort.
When I came back into Oklahoma City and El Reno to work, I got familiar with Weimers and Dutch Snyder by coming over to the training center on my lunch hour and lifting weights with them. And during that relationship beginning, Lieutenant Weimers asked me and Dutch Snyder if we were interested in forming a tactical team. And we, of course, didn't know much about it, but we thought that'd be interesting to be a part of, so we told him, yeah, we'd be part of it.
When Lieutenant Weimers asked me to be on the team, and I knew John Haney was also involved, I know that these two guys would do the right thing. They were professional, they had the expertise, and I felt comfortable with whatever decisions that they made, and I know that we could do a good job. And I wanted to be a part of that, so I said yes immediately.
So we were having these needs to be able to do more than just do our traditional patrolling of the 25,000 miles of highway that we had in Oklahoma, and that was occurring. And then we had the most important thing, a part of that decision, was we had leaders within the highway patrol, men like Darrell Weimers and John Haney and Dutch Snyder and others, who were recognizing that there was this need to have teams of troopers to be able to come in and deal in emergency situations and to quickly eliminate or to neutralize a situation where it would be safe for civilians and for other police officers. So Darrell and our guys here locally came to me with a plan, said we need to organize a tactical squad of men who would be highly trained and equipped well, and to be able to deal in these emergency crisis situations, and we don't have that. The problem was we had no resources to stand up a new unit like that and to be able to equip, train these guys to be able to take on this assignment. So I advised them that, hey, guys, you're on your own right now. We don't have resources to be able to help you. And if you believe this is important, they assured me that it was. And then I was also hearing nationally that it was important, where LA and other major cities had already formed tactical teams or SWAT teams. So it was obvious Oklahoma needed this. We had the capacity to be able to do it, men who were interested in volunteer and taking on those roles, but we just didn't have the resources to make it happen.
When we got together, Weimers and then Fred and Dutch and all of us were talking and sitting around, and I knew that we could do it, and that every one of those guys had been in the military. And when we decided, well, if we can get a few small people, small in number, and maybe we could catch them. if they get out on the ground. The police departments were using SWAT tactics.
And we didn't want to be called SWAT because that was a police department acronym for Special Weapons and Tactics. But most of our work was going to be done out there, so that's tactical. So I think that's how we came up with the name TAC Team, for Tactical Team. And but of course back then we weren't allowed to go to the brass. So Weimers was he was the one that went with our voice.
The original group of TAC team members and team members that came on later on, I believe, had the same idea about our leadership on the tactical teams. Lieutenant Weimers at the time was our Colonel Sink, and later on we realized John Haney was our Dick Winters of the TAC team. We would have done anything for them. Whatever they told us to do, we would have done because we had confidence in their leadership.
But at the time, you got to remember, there's no money. So, we're on our own. And so we had to come up with our own equipment.
Later, we had to find different items of equipment, such as packs and shoulder harnesses and things of this nature. So we gave a local surplus store a lot of business, and he would always laugh at us when we came in and tell us that war was imminent, and he'd giggle as we bought all this equipment from him and watch us walk out the door.
What do I need? What kind of equipment do I need? And Lieutenant Weimers advised that get up some fatigues, that he'd scrounge some, and I said I think I can handle that. Going down to the local Army surplus store, I had been in, like I said, ROTC. I kind of knew what a uniform looked like, and so I had a Ruger Mini 14 as a personal weapon that I kept in the trunk of the patrol car. We had different size. We didn't have, each of us didn't even have the same hat. It was a kind of a motley crew. At the beginning, our fatigues, I got some green fatigues, and we dyed them black along with the patches. And I remember my wife saying that, I think I washed them for the first time after dyeing and made everything black that was in the washer. I remember things like that. That doesn't really mean anything, but I remember that.
And that gave us a little bit of recognition and a little bit of uniformity, and made us feel like a team. Because the patrol had no money that they were putting into it at all, so we had to beg, borrow, and procure most of our equipment, either from the military or from surplus stores around town.
I remember my first weapon that I carried on the attack team was a Remington 700 243, which I still got with a scope on it, and so I was kind of the sniper of it. And other guys had their own rifles and their own pistols. I carried a 44 Magnum 6.5-inch barrel in a shoulder holster. That was my first TAC team uniform. And but remember, all this time I was still in the National Guard, and so I'm making friends over there in the Guard, and so I was able to acquire through my friends through the Guard a lot of our equipment that if we hadn't been for the National Guard, we wouldn't have made it, because the department did not have any money. And so we were able to get uniforms, backpacks, pistol belts, shoulder straps, canteens, ammo pouches, things like that were, to them, was surplus. So they donated them to the Highway Patrol, not individually, but as a state agency, a Highway Patrol.
Our first training we started was at the right behind the training center in the creek, and it was mostly camouflage, concealment, team movement, and this was not a difficult thing for any of us. It's just a matter of working together and how to cross the creek and how to cross roads and basic stuff. The other things that we did, we started a lot of rope work and worked on rappelling and so on. We used the training center as a point to rappel off of, and this gave everybody confidence. A lot of people have never done that, and they got confident in themselves, and we continued on with that basic training that we would eventually expand on each phase of it.
John, being the key instructor for the whole team, he taught us how to rappel, and we started out rappelling. Our first time we rappelled, we learned all the knots that we needed to, and from John, through his ranger training and his rappelling that he did there, the first time we rappelled was right outside here on this hill, right here by the commissioner's office.
Our training for the tactical team resulted in training in areas that we had available, which was very few. We trained in the creek behind the training center on our first training session that we had, and it was kind of a funny thing. We were training in concealment and trying to not be noticed by anyone as we crawl up the creek. We didn't know at the time, but the creek was full of poison ivy, and of course I got a real bad case of poison ivy crawling in that creek, and of course drew a lot of humor from people because of that.
We learned spider crawled off the roof. We rappelled off the roof. We did stairwell room entry in the training center in some of the rooms there. We practiced room entry. We practiced, like I said, rappelling, knot tying, first aid. That was our training, and sometimes it was once a month, sometimes it's two a month, and usually we started after, I think in '75, we started a week during the summer.
The initial training was at the training center, then we went to the Oklahoma City Fire Department Academy over there and trained rappelling off their towers and firemen's carries and that type of stuff with their dummies. We did explosives training down at Joseph Hart Correctional Facility down on their range.
We started training, first of all, you train in the daytime. Train everything you're going to do, land nav, going from point A to point B, where the individual gets confidence in doing that. Then we start training with the camouflage concealment. Then movement in the daytime. The tactics with the patrol is different. And once that they got that under the belt and they felt pretty confident they were doing real good, then we switched. We trained at night. We started training at night and formations and movement and listing posts and things that we would do on an actual operation. And this provided more confidence to the team members. They knew that they could go anywhere at night, just like they went in the daytime. They knew that they could listen, sit on listening posts, and they knew that everything that they had the ability to do, that they could do it. They found out they could do things that some people had never been out that night like that. And they got confident that the night is our friend and is not the enemy.
In regards to our training, at first we sometimes did it on our days off. If it happened to be on your days off, you probably weren't going to get that day back. But usually we tried to schedule and it usually worked out that as long as the supervisor had enough time that he could schedule that. But it took some dedication, knowing that the hours you weren't going to get back. If you trained for 10 hours that day, driving home, you weren't going to get that time back. It was just a day for day. You didn't get it wasn't for hour.
The department at the time wouldn't give us time off or credit for training, so we had to train on our days off. We had to, of course, have our own equipment. We was responsible for keeping up our patrol duties in our counties as well as training. And we trained at first 1 day a month, and then later we changed it to 2 days a month. The department's still balking at us not wanting to give us time to train. So, we had to kind of do double duty. We had to do our assignments and then do the training also.
Captain Weimers at that time was instrumental in keeping us going, and most of the troop commanders did not like it because we were taking up time that no one really understood why we need to do this, except we all thought we did. And as soon as we got to a point that we were very successful in that, they started learning a little bit more. Wimmers got to be higher rank, and then pretty soon that was our protection. He kind of protected us, and the troop commanders couldn't say very much because he would keep it pretty well shut down in Oklahoma City.
We started a team. Daryl was on it, John and Fred and myself and Jim Pischel. Daryl, I don't know, he made arrangements for us to go to FBI SWAT school.
We flew to Quantico, Virginia, and had training there where we trained on the FBI Academy's ranges and also on the Marine Corps obstacle course. While going through this obstacle course, we were told we set a team record for the time going through this obstacle course, and that included the Marine Corps and the FBI also. So we were quite proud of that, and Lieutenant Weimers, while I was there, carrying a medicine ball in the gym, strained a muscle, and we thought we were in trouble, but we still completed this obstacle course.
The first thing that we did up there is just physical conditioning, and we did a lot of shooting on the ranges, learned a lot of room clearing techniques, sniper type operations. And this was a 1 week school. It gave us something to measure ourselves by. We were the only highway patrol team there. There were 5 teams. One other odd duck was the 10th Special Forces out of Batos, Germany, that had a 5-man team there. And it gave us a lot of information that we probably wouldn't have gotten any place else. One of the most important things that we learned there was the human behavior side of what was going on in hostage situations. And that really helped us try to better understand what the victim was going through and what the bad guy was going through. We learned a little bit about rights and the prisons, and when you should try to go on in and when you shouldn't. This whetted our appetite. We wanted more than this. We got off the island of Oklahoma, and now then we're trying to see some areas we didn't know. We were confident in ourselves as far as team movement, and we just needed more training there. But we did not know some of the things that they were teaching us.
And it gave us a way to teach others.
Lieutenant Haney would always have a plan for us, regardless of what it was, and it was always something that we needed, and it made sense in the training. It wasn't just working for nothing or doing something just because we could. There was always an object lesson in the training, resulting in teamwork and not individual troopers being out there. We all worked together. We all had one mission, and that was to accomplish that mission. So the training was good. It was useful and purposeful. Never doubted what training we had and why we had it.
Our training got better. Our equipment got better. We trained better, more efficiently. We evolved into where we could track people, actually track a guy through the woods, a bad guy through the woods.
We had training in land navigation, compass work, map reading, and then John taught us to track using a stick at a certain length and measuring footprints on there and making a mark on that stick, knowing that that's the length of the track that you're looking for. And then he just, all from his training with rangers, taught us how to track, watching the ground, the length of the step and everything, knowing that if he changed directions, he's still going to be going somewhere in that area. And he taught us all of that.
Part of our organization is taking a bunch of individuals, all leaders, all the great people, and trying to get them to be a team. And we didn't know whether they would be a part of a team, or they thought they were, or what they knew. And I didn't know. I didn't know each one of these people. So I'd go out and we'd go through training, and we would. They thought they knew this, or they thought they knew that, and some did, some didn't. And we started training. They'd have to know everything, everybody, and then all of a sudden, I'd have a team leader. He'd be the team leader. He developed a plan. He'd lead us off, and then I'd kill him off. And then I'd just pick one. So the guy that's at the back of the class wasn't really paying attention. Now he's the team leader. Now that stresses him out, and quite a bit. And then I'd kill him off and put another one in charge of it. So the plan had to be in training to go from point A to point B, and they had to pay attention to what was going on. The whole bunch of them had to do it. The thing that get along they could do, but then you started stressing them by putting them out at night and doing the same thing that they did in the daytime, even on the same ground. And we try to do it the same way. And I'd kill them off, and now that the other person is leading the team. So pretty soon they found out that they'd better be paying attention, they better be knowing what's going on. And this is realistic. If one of the 2 or 3 or 4 got shot, who's going to do this? Who's going to lead? So everybody's got a leader. And I think it worked pretty well. And they got where they could do it. And even on manhunts, we didn't know who was going to show up first as a TAC team when we activate them. And the senior person would be there, and everybody knew the game plan. The senior person is there, they're the leader till the designated leader gets on the site.
In one of the things that we advanced in was communications, and I have to give the credit here to Lieutenant Haney and Commissioner Weimers for their help with that. John Haney knew about communications from every direction that you could come from, and in being knowledgeable of that, he came up with ideas such as putting 2 phone numbers on a cell phone or a bag phone because they had what we called 2-NAN capability. John also developed and came up with a radio system that he was familiar with, but no one in our agency was, where we could communicate from a portable radio to Oklahoma City from somewhere way off in the country by a repeater system that was put into the units.
We had one problem, and that was really a money problem and really a design problem with radios. We could not communicate with each other. We could not communicate with the police departments that were helping or the sheriff's department because Highway Patrol was on 44.7 and 44.9 low band. Most of our police departments were on 155 megahertz, and that was high band. And we needed to go and have a radio that would talk on both. We didn't have it. It wasn't invented. There wasn't any of that animal like that. The military could do it with some of their equipment, but we had no way to do it. And so we worked on a deal we decided that we take a high band radio, 5 watt, 5 channel or whatever channels we could get on it, and we had a low band radio in our patrol unit, and I didn't see any reason that we couldn't design a radio that worked crossband. So when we're out in the field, we're on high band, and we talk to our car, and it converts it over to low band. So when we left our car, each team leader had a repeater in his car, and he would leave the radio in his unit on car to car or car to station, whichever one that he wanted to do. And usually it's car to car where we could talk to other highway patrol cars. And we had a low band receive head and a high band radio. And we did that by design. That it doesn't take anything for put a receiver in a high band radio that can receive low band. It didn't have to transmit on low band, but we could hear on it. And so that seemed to work pretty good. All we need to do now is find somebody who wanted to build one of these things. And we went out on bids. First of all, we had to write a grant. And we wrote the grant, and about $7,000 and something like that, and went out on bid. And RCA, GE, Motorola, several of them would not bid on it, but GE did. And we really were surprised at it. GE came back and said, we'll build them. And we said, all right, well, why are you going to build this for us? Said, well, we could spend about $8 million, $5 million or $8 million, we could sell them to the state of Kentucky. And our engineers hadn't figured out what you all had figured out, and so we're selling all the radios that you designed over to Kentucky, and you're getting the radios like you wanted. And part of this grant that we got was for hostage negotiation, and that was a selling point, that we were the only one in the state that could go everywhere statewide and they were having a lot of hostage situations at that time.
The way we were activated, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have pagers. We either got to notified over the radio if you were working, 10-8, and or when you're at home, you got a phone call, usually from dispatch, telling you what the situation was and whether you were in. The alert was either red, yellow, or green. Red, standby, or get ready. Yellow, standby, and green was go. They would tell you where the rally point was. Assembly point would be located, and you get your gear, your bag, and go. Now, if you didn't have a unit, sometimes we shared units back then, either with 3 or 2 people in Oklahoma County, and I would keep all my gear in a bag, and my go bag. And I'd have all my gear there and uniforms and some change of clothes because you didn't know, and maybe a couple of C rations that you'd have ready to go because you did want to eat, and sometimes you didn't get to eat.
One of the problems that we had was, of course, there wasn't cell phones. There wasn't anything but landlines, and we had a problem activating the teams. Now, we could send a teletype to the headquarters of wherever the person was that we wanted to call out, and they would call him on the telephone, and hopefully he was at home, and we got him activated that way. We would, at troop headquarters, we would send out a teletype that they do not broadcast this and do not release it to the media, that we were going to call a tactical team out for whatever it might be. This was done on a tape, a little ticker tape. The machine, the teletype, punched holes in this tape. And eventually it came to a point that I would go back to my military experience, and I would put out a 5-paragraph field order telling what the mission was, where to meet, what the communication is going to be, how the thing is going to go down, where everything about what we were trying to do. And this tape would be sometimes 30 to 40 feet long, and they would have to be fed into the machine all in one piece. And if somebody walked across the floor and cut it, then it'd stop, and we'd have to go back and glue it together. And dispatchers got real good experience of splicing tapes back together, and we didn't have the normal system that you would have now. We didn't even know anything about it. But eventually, we got pagers, and these pagers would allow us to do this, and we had code for different things. One, that you're activated, and we would send a series of ones. One is you're on standby, or 2 was you're on standby, and 3 were something else. And this gave us contact with our people, and then they would have to call into headquarters and say that, yep, we've been notified and we're okay on it.
Okay, in the beginning, we had a little resistance from our department wanting to allow us to have training time and things of that nature. But after they saw a useful purpose, we were assigned to many manhunts. One in particular was the Girl Scout murders up in northeastern Oklahoma, where we went into the field and stayed there for 8 days, walking through creeks and various areas of brush and rocks and things looking for the suspect.
A lot of times and probably we looked at the history. A looked at the history that we'd all been on, and patrol got used to, they're like everybody else, let's hurry up and get this over with, and a lot of times it didn't work that way. We found out that it took at least 3 days, 72 hours or so, to catch this guy. We'd have the outer perimeter set up, we'd have the inner perimeter set up of highway patrol cars, and it'd go in day and night. And about day 2, the guy would get antsy. Well, I don't know what I'm lost. I'm going to start moving. And once he started moving, we could get dogs barking. We could people would see some movement someplace, and he would make mistakes. So we knew that once we got to an area, that unless a police officer said he was someplace else, we knew that he was still there, and we stayed with him and kept pressure on him. And then when we got a track, it was all over for him. He didn't know it, but it was gone.
We were contacted by them to conduct the exercise because they transport hazardous waste and material from nuclear materials across the state, and they have armed teams that follow those trucks, plus the people in the trucks that are armed. So they like to do exercises so that they can train their teams. We ran 3 exercises that week when we first got there. We all put the miles equipment on, went out and trained with that, got to get used to that. And then we conducted one exercise to set up an ambush. We had a law to knock the truck out because it had miles gear on it. And the people could come out the bottom of the truck, and they would take up positions around the tires. Well, the first exercise we ran, we were shooting other people, and they were shooting back, and some of their guys had taken their batteries out of their miles so they couldn't be killed. And once we figured that out, and their supervisors figured it out because they had a referee gun that could come out and point and set the system off or test it, and they found that they'd taken out the batteries. So the next exercise we ran, we took their cargo away from them. We have the distinction of being the only ones to ever take their cargo away from them.
Anyway, while we were out, Lieutenant Weimers and I were together, and we heard noises, and we were to remain as silent as we could be with no radio traffic or anything. And we heard this noise, and it was getting closer, and at the time we thought the suspect is coming. It got closer and closer, and it came a point to where the suspect was right in front of us, and we had our flashlights ready and our weapons ready, and all of a sudden we yelled out "state troopers" and turned our flashlights on, and we were as scared as the suspect was, and it turned out to be an armadillo, and this armadillo jumped about a foot off the ground, and so did Lieutenant Weimers and I. We both jumped. It frightened us at the time, and then after that we turned our lights off and got quiet and started giggling about it.
You know, Pete Carmen, there's 2 different manhunts that we were on, that we were together all night long, and once in a house, and it's when we were looking for Jones and Franklin after they had escaped once. They'd killed Bill Walker, who was out of my school. They'd killed him and a park ranger, and they were captured, and then they escaped again. And we were set up in this house, and thinking that they might try to break in, and we're in this house all night long, and we see these figures walking by the window, and we're ready for them to come in that door. And then all of a sudden we hear this noise on the back porch of the screen door rattling. And we all both say, well, we know the reason they didn't come in, they heard our hearts pounding. And but this is, here's your brother sitting there with you, ready to go. And it's unbelievable, the feeling that you have.
And this is about 1978. He gave me a form to fill out, and at this time, I don't know what Lieutenant Weimer's rank was or position, but he gave me a questionnaire to fill out to attend a FBI bomb school. And being on the TAC team led into being on a bomb squad, along with all the bomb techs. It was kind of a prerequisite because you'd proven yourself that you're not going to freeze under pressure, you're not going to lock up and short out or stress out over a device, an IED. And so I didn't know anything about electronics. I majored in history because that's the only thing I could pass at OU. I tried everything else. But that was kind of a prerequisite. I was the first one, actually, a bomb tech on Oklahoma Highway Patrol. Mainly because my name started with C and Lieutenant Haney started with a H. So I got my diploma first at Huntsville, Alabama, at Redstone Arsenal. That's where the FBI bomb school's at.
I look back and I think of mistakes that we might have made. I don't think we made many mistakes in training. I think the system worked that we set up. It's worked for the military, catching people, and it worked for us too. One of the biggest mistakes that I think I made was not keeping the people at the headquarters, the leaders. After we lost Weimers, then these people did not know what we knew. They did not know what we could do, and I didn't teach them what we could do. I just thought that they would know, and I don't know if that's a mistake that I made or not. But when I look today, some years later, the team is still out there. The techniques might have changed some. Their method and their equipment has changed some, but they're still operating, and they're still performing the same job that we did many years ago, and they're still putting bad people in jail.
As a team, we had the camaraderie to want to do a good job. And it was guys like me, or I was trying to be like them, probably me trying to be like them, that kind of made a good tight bond that holds today among the people that are on the TAC team.
Okay, it makes me proud to know that our hard work and the decision to form the tactical teams has evolved into what's there today. The teams have good equipment, they have good training, they have many people that have gone through this tactical team group, and we're all like brothers. We trust each other, we know what to expect from each other, and we work for one thing, and that's to accomplish the mission and catch the suspect or put them out of service.
I cannot think and remember a time that I did not want to go to work on the highway patrol. Every day was a different day. And back then, when we were on the TAC team, we were gone a lot of times. And there was no overtime, there was no extra pay. We bought everything ourselves, but we had a mission. We loved it, and you can't believe the camaraderie that is among members of the TAC team.
Well, I mean, we all enjoyed one another. We all had a sense that we could trust one another. We were all ready to go and back one another up. That was not a problem. We, like I say, the turnover was quite high initially because of different reasons, this and that. Some people didn't want to put the time in, some did. But those that were there felt like I could trust them and they could trust me to back their back up.
Reflecting back on 1974 and 75 and the events that took part and some of the many losses that of good friends that were killed in the line of duty, reflecting back on those times, at the time I didn't figure that I was anything special. I just knew that what I wanted to do and that our opportunity came up, and I took it. I didn't know if that was going to be historical or a great event in the annals of the Highway Patrol, but at the time you don't think about things like that. But in retrospect, I kind of feel proud to be associated with the team members that I got to know, their effort, their bravery, going into the woods looking for somebody that's armed. That I don't think I'm special, but I just did it. I like to do it. Why I did it, I don't know. I just did because I wanted to be part of something. I wanted to do something I thought that was important. To keep these guys from murdering somebody else. Because all the manhunts I was ever on, it wasn't for a speeding ticket. It's for murdering someone. These were bad escapees. These were bad guys. And they needed to be apprehended before they could hurt somebody else.
It seemed like that we were in the woods. You needed people that could be in the woods. And in rural Oklahoma, there's a lot of woods.
The people that formed this team, the way it started, without them, it wouldn't have happened. Without the Weimers, without the Snyders, without the Carmens and Perry Floyd and just so many that I could sit here and think of a lot of them that were all leaders themselves. They just come together, they prove themselves as leaders. You've got to be a good follower to be a good leader, and that's exactly what we had. We had a bunch of good people.
John Haney, who was Airborne Ranger, Pathfinder trained in the regular Army, was, as far as I'm concerned, was one of the most knowledgeable guys in military tactics that I had ever met. John was just unbelievable on his knowledge of what to do.
The people that we had that started this thing, we all had a mission. We all believed in it. We all knew we could do it. And we're the charter members of the idea of that team concept. We live it every day. I think of it, every one of those guys, and they were the best.
As I think about it, the tactical team was not my idea or the idea of Chief Matheson. It really was the idea of 3 or 4 of our troopers who, again, recognized the need for a unit such as this, and they continued to make their case and continue to talk about it and to bring in evidence about how this could work. And so I'm very proud that ultimately we did it. I knew how disciplined this team was. I mean, these men were extremely mentally tough, very disciplined. I knew they would follow their rules and the protocols, and that we would have, at least with this crew, we would have a good operation, a crack force. They're heroes of mine. They were all really men that I truly respected, and I will never forget their kind of insistence and their belief in an idea, and were strong enough emotionally and brave enough to come in and to face me behind the desk saying, "Hey, Commissioner, we need to do this," and it's worked out very well. I'm so proud of what's happened, how the OHP Tactical Force has evolved. Of course, now it's properly funded and it's well equipped and trained, and the state of Oklahoma has a real asset in this group of people, and hopefully they're not called upon to be used. There are women and men in that team now, and we can be very proud of them.
Hazardous materials and international terrorism. You see. Academy, more or less introduced you to this in regard to we had a class schedule change. For the next 2 hours, we have the privilege of having the Chief of the Highway Patrol to teach you something, as I more or less stimulate your minds with yesterday in regard to changing times. I told you some years ago, Lieutenant Miller and I myself sat in the Patrol Academy, and we were taught riot squads, hijackings. Little did we know that times would bring it and accelerate to the point that we would be directly involved in it. As I say, the Chief of Oklahoma Highway Patrol, Colonel Darrell Weimer, is here today to give us a 2-hour class on basic elements of international terrorism. The Chief has been here and spoke to you previously. He's a man to be admired. He works hard. He's all Highway Patrol. He's ex-Marine. He's all Green. He's all Highway Patrol. He's dedicated his life to this. He is very expert, elite in his field. No better person do I know on Oklahoma Highway Patrol to teach this class. Chief Darrell Weimer. Thank you. Notice some of you smiling when you came in the room. There's got to be something wrong. I don't know what it is, and we'll find out. Anybody that smiles, what week are you in now?
8th week, sir.
Anybody that smiles in the 8th week is either crazy or stupid.
Great.
Probably so. Knowing you eels, we'll see. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are here to discuss something that you may or may not think pertinent to your training, or we tend to think that it is. It's pertinent in the sense that any day one of you could be called upon to suppress or partake or suppress a terrorist incident. Now, a terrorist incident of the type that I'm talking about is not a normal run-of-the-mill Commerce, Oklahoma bank holdup where a hostage is taken. What we're going to discuss today is something that each one of us probably has thought about, watched the 6 o'clock news, 5 o'clock news, watched as a number of dismembered bodies are dragged from a bus station. But it's always been a long, long way off, a far distance from us. Well, I am here to predict today that it's not always going to be that far away.